welcome back YouTube to Peterson Auto. As you can see, the 351's going back together. Valve cover's just laying in place. I still got to tighten the rockers and all that good stuff. The distributor's just in there to be in there to look cool, because I kind of want to get psyched up about this. But the head is bolted down with head studs. Cover how to put those in. New spark plugs are in. New gaskets. And the exhaust is on. This is still not welded up yet, but we will be getting to that soon now. V-band collector and all that good stuff, and the intake's kind of just laying in place. So I'm going to strip this down and go through some things for you quick, and show you how to put it all back together. So we already did this side, like I said, so we're going to do this side. I'm going to clean this up just a little better first. Then we're going to put the I'll put the studs in and the gasket on and just show you that before going any further. Yeah, so this side does need a little more cleanup. Doesn't need a final cleanup. I got the head over here. That's done. I did port it. I'll show you what I did. We'll run through that and hopefully get this thing buttoned up tonight. We'll see. Keep our fingers crossed. Okay, so I got the gasket surface cleaned up. I put the gasket on. I started screwing in the head studs. These are cheap Speedmaster studs. PCE 279.1012. There's not much info on them online. Is what it is. But we'll use ARP specs. ARP knows what to do. So you take your stud, you take the big end, and you thread it in. Big threads go into the block. Thread it in. It says hand tight. I have to give you just a snug more, so they have that Allen in the end there, you can see. And just give them a little more snug. So the gasket goes on before. You can put a gasket on after your studs too. That's not going to hurt anything. It's just easier to get it on before. Sometimes getting that floppy gasket lined up is a problem. But our gasket's on. We have our head over here. Okay, here's our head. We port match the exhaust. So I basically made this match up with the gasket here. And there is a boss cast right in here for the smog on these. These are non-smog heads, so there would be a hole if it was a factory smog head. These are not factory smog heads, so there's no hole, but you see a little dimple. That's the very end of it there. So just smooth that out and smooth down the runners a decent bit on the exhaust side. So looks pretty good. Hopefully the lighting's not horrible. It's not perfect. It could be much better, but it is much better than factory, especially taking that out there and port matching to the exhaust. That's going to help the flow a lot better. Hopefully account a little bit for those crinkle bends in our exhaust tubing. So yeah, it's not much, but that's our rough port job. On the bottom here where it goes into the valve, it's a fairly sharp breakover. There's a couple different porting theories to that, if you should or shouldn't take that out. I didn't. I was just lazy. I didn't feel like pulling the valves. And this is not going to be a super high RPM engine, so it's not going to need a whole lot of extra flow. It seems to help a lot more in the higher end. Some guy put like these on a flow bench. The Mustang version, the E7 Mustang heads it was actually, but this is also an E7 casting, so it's the same casting, just doesn't have those thermactor holes drilled in for that emission stuff there. So that being said, he did a bunch of work on that I found on the internet there, and it didn't seem to help until, you know, higher flow, higher RPM didn't seem to really help, I guess. So I just kind of let them go for now, because it's going to be a turbo engine. It's going to be plenty of pressure. It's going to have overlap with the stock cam. So it is what it is. We'll see how it works. You know, there'll be a full engine built sometime in the far, far future for this thing from the ground up. But for now, put some boost to them and see what happens. Also had to repair 2 threads. They're kind of repaired. I'm going to get out the flat disc and grind that down some. This one's pretty smooth, so we'll have to do that. Those are inserts. I got them off Amazon. They're great. Worked out pretty well. Much better than a helicoil. So, did have to repair those too. Other than that, this is ready to go on, and we're going to put it on. So you take your head, all cleaned up and ready. Line up your bolt holes. As gently as you can with a 100-pound head, shove that iron beast into place. Now, spec does say you need some grease, or lube, or oil. I don't know where my oil can went. It was over by the bench grinder. Just going to throw a little bit of white lithium on each one. So that's going to be our lube there. Now you take your nuts and your washers. Washers kind of have like a flat and a rounded side. I like to put the rounded side up. Instructions don't say anything about that, if it's important that way or not or what, but it's just kind of something I've developed over the years. So yeah, do as you wish. Instructions don't say they need to go that way. It's just kind of a OCD habit of mine. I'm going to start all the nuts and washers. These are 12-point nuts, by the way. Not sure why better head studs wind up using 12-point stuff. It is what it is. I kind of find it annoying, but I guess it's a little harder to strip it out because you have more points of contact. But with more of these modern socket designs they have out, the flank drives and whatnot, on a 6-point fastener you can get 12 points of contact. So I guess it really all depends what you're into and what you like. You know, in this case, like I said, these were real cheap, and that's what mattered. So I'm going to thread these down reasonably by hand. Some of them might be a little hard, just because of the machining process. If you notice, I have the bolts up there in the front of this head, up here. That's where the turbo mount goes. So I left those in the head so I could identify the head. You didn't want to mix up your rights and left because you're reusing all the valve train there. So I didn't want to mix up rights and lefts. I wanted to keep them separate, segregated, whatever, so we know. I also have all my valve train marked right and left and put in the exact order it came off, so I cannot mess it up. So that's key. Don't mix things up, because if you have a lot of wear on one push rod and a lot of wear on one rocker, next thing you know, you have a lot of wear on a lot of stuff, and then you wind up with play and you're trying to figure out why it doesn't work. So don't mix it up, keep it in order. It's easy to take a box and punch some holes in it. Probably give you a quick rundown of how I do that. So we got our torque wrench here. It's a nice beam style. Going to set it up to 110 foot-pounds. That's the torque spec there. I'm not even sure if you'll see that or not. We're going to set it to 110 foot-pounds. That's torque spec for these head bolts. Torque pattern starts center intake side 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Nice and simple and easy. So 110 foot-pounds is the torque spec. I actually got those out of the ARP fasteners that are equivalent to these, because these did not come with instructions. So you got her to click, that's what you need. We're going to go ahead and get the rest of them done. Alright YouTube, there you go. We have the head bolts on. So, got them all torqued to spec. That's set and ready to go. Next thing is to drop in our push rods. Now, we had a conversation couple minutes ago here in the video. Said about keeping all your valve train in order, okay? So watch this. I got this box. Water pump, flywheel, intake, exhaust. So when I go ahead and I take this box and I set it on the engine, just as you see, I can pull them out and put them in the right spot. So if you take a look here, on this side head, here's your intake, here's your exhaust. That's your intake valve, that's your exhaust valve. Take the water pump side, and put that one in its hole. Exhaust, intake, exhaust, intake, exhaust, intake, and exhaust. Okay, now they're in their holes. Now this box, save it for next time, kick it to the curb, okay? Now, I just threw those down in. You do have to make sure they're in the lifters. We'll give you a quick view of that, show you what it looks like when they're in the lifters. And we're going to put the rockers on. Now the rockers are laid out in the same order in relation to said box next to the box. They're off camera, so I'm going to grab them and put them on. These are stock rockers. And I did just adjust the push rods into the lifters to make sure they're going to actually sit in there. So we don't have to worry about that. But make sure you adjust them, and I'll show you how to do that here in a second, where they need a seat. Show you where everything needs a seat. But if you keep everything in order, or you label everything somehow, you know, you're not going to have any weird wear issues going on when you put it all back together. And that's key here. That really is. You don't want weird wear issues.